Hello, all my esteemed peoples out there. This is your boy, Ale Luz del Sol, and I'm here to talk about religion, Christianity in particular, because that is the religion that I was once a part of, associated with. That was once my ideology, my system of belief. You know, that is how I looked at life. That is how I looked at the world around me, and how I interpreted things and how I judged things. And I'm thankful and grateful that I am no longer a Christian. I no longer, or at least I don't go by this title anymore, and I don't associate myself with the ideology or the institution of Christianity and what it teaches as a whole, as its entirety. You know, I do believe in a creator, and I believe in a source, but I don't believe that there is a book that written by God, that God inspired some fallible man to write, or men, and then other infallible men who are supposedly infallible because they were under divine inspiration, approved the so-called infallible work of the other peoples, and then we all are supposed to just take this and accept this as the truth, as this blueprint for life and how to live and how to go to heaven and not go to hell. And oh yeah, on top of, you know, this book called the Bible was not really even written by Jesus, who was supposed to be the main character of this story, who in reality is not the main character of the so-called Christian ideology story, even though that's really how they get you. But so yeah, so it wasn't written by him, and then 400 years later, you know, the Council of Nicaea, which was put together by Constantine, who was the Emperor of Rome, created this new religion of Christianity, Catholicism, whatever you want to call it, because Christians don't want to call it, well, Christians think theirs is Christianity, Catholicism is Catholicism, and the Catholics believe obviously they're the one true church because they're the first ones that existed, and on that technicality they are correct, but it's all wrong and false at the end of the day, because we know that the system of religions, Christianity in particular, Catholicism, has the same owners, same founders as the religion of money, which is the main religion of today. That is the main love of the world, money. And you know, the same people who wrote, you know, your Constitution, your amendments, or whatever else. Not necessarily the same people, because there were some people that were trying to keep this country, America, uncorrupted, untouched by those forces. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, all roads point to the same peoples, you know, and Christianity is in cahoots, you know, because if Christianity were really a religion of God, of the people, of a true loving God, then one, how could you even have slavery? How could you even have justified that? You know, and that was a big part, and that was all run by the so-called Christians. And then you could say, oh, well, the Bible accepts slavery, and then, yeah, that just points to what the fuck is wrong with the Bible. You know, that you have a religion of love, and love your neighbor as yourself, love your enemy, you know, and then you have slaves, you know, and like what, 1600 years later. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with Christianity, with religion, because you just give over your thinking process. And it's just the same thing like the military, joining the military or the police. You know, you're not supposed to think for yourself. And that's individualistic thoughts are evil, or sinful, because you're not thinking of the collective whole. You know, you're supposed to actually submit yourself. Your thoughts are supposed to become God's thoughts. God's thoughts are supposed to become your thoughts. And if that were really true, then we wouldn't have the world that we have. You know, at least from the Christian perspective of people who actually believe those things. You know, instead of supporting systems of control, supporting government, supporting military, you know, and they all do. They pay taxes, they support Caesar, an illegal taxing system, you know. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, okay. Give to the church what is the church, okay, you know. And so bullshit, one hand wipes the other, you know. And they get non-profit status. And people look up to these people in the church like they're supposed to be some great leaders, and you know, they're men of God. And some of these are the worst, most despicable, the biggest liars, the biggest frauds on the planet, you know. And people, you know, people are always deceived by so easily, you know. And if they looked at the real thing, it's a complete other thing. If people really studied the Bible like I did as a young person, 16 years old, who didn't come from a Presbyterian background or a Catholic background or Baptist or Anglican or non-denominational, you know, I came from fucking shit background, Argentine, fucked up parents, doing cocaine, Argentine sort of Khazar, you know, no religion was instilled. I was not instilled with even morals and stuff, but I was very lucky, I was very fortunate, I was very blessed that I always had a God consciousness in me, and I rejected a lot of the things, the systems of the world, and I saw the darkness because I grew up in the darkness. I grew up seeing, you know, beatings and violence and receiving beatings, and thank God never molested, you know, but seeing prostitution and hookers and pornography, and you know, I was outside in the streets as a kid, so I saw everything. And when I came, so I wasn't brought up, this is how you read the Bible, I wasn't catechized, read the catechisms or baptized as an infant or any of it, but when I really came to study the Bible, I studied it on a clear slate with no other outside influence. And then as you go on, you know, you read it, and then you go to church, and it's like, for me, it was like, this is so different, because like in the book of Acts, these people lived together, they shared everything they had, and in church it's another thing. And Jesus was like a hippie, you know, he didn't have a job, you know, even though he was a carpenter, they say, and you know, he just went around loving and being kind and being friends of tax collectors and prostitutes and all types of people, and healing people and accepting people and forgiving people, and just showing them the true light of God, you know, the true way, the way, the truth, and the life, that the real way, the truth, and the life, you know, of being one with the source, one with nature, you know. I mean, he had altercations, you know, with the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, you know, flip tables in the temple. And do we see that in today's Christianity, or what they say we're followers, disciples of Jesus? We don't see that shit at all. In fact, we see the exact opposite, you know, exact opposite. You know, they both, lion and lamb, sleep together, you know, the whore, they sleep together, you know, and they all are friends and scratch each other's back. And it's bullshit, you know, everyone's believing bullshit, you know, oh, this guy, nice guy, he's a nice guy, he's got a nice outfit on, nice shirt and tie, he looks so clean, he looks so respectable, and then, you know, they just believe whatever bullshit comes out of his mouth. And yeah, he'll have some bullshit that is some truth, like a guy like Joel Osteen, who's got like 20,000 seat church and millions and billions of dollars, whatever, and you know, but you know the reality is a whole nother thing, you know. And I fell for this thing. I fell for it because I was young, and I was you know, I guess it would have been different if I was indoctrinated by something by 6 or 7, but I wasn't. So I still had a free mind, and I was young, and you know, I wanted a relationship with the source, and I didn't know anything about it. You know, I wondered or questioned and about God, and you know, I felt very lost in the world, and you know, very depressed growing up. And Christianity kind of came along, yeah, I kind of latched onto that because, yeah, I wanted to be healed. I knew my brokenness, you know, I knew my hurt, I knew my pain, very, very much so. And I saw, you know, I've experienced darkness and so many different things. So I wanted love and to feel God's love, and I wanted to be part of something, you know. So I believed, and I believed because I wanted to be like Jesus. Like, I wanted to be, you know, just, you know, full of light, you know, full of love. And I knew I was full of anger, and I had a lot of bitterness and jealousy and a lot of things going on. But the Christianity only brought me so far. You know, it didn't really help me to deal deeper with my deeper issues and my deeper self. You know, my inner child, as you would say, right? You know, I didn't, you know, I had very repressed trauma, you know, and even though I was trying from the outside to obey and be a good Christian, deep down I was dying. You know, I was in pain. I had no way of dealing with it. I didn't know how. I'd pray and all these things, but deep down, you know, I wasn't able to get to it. But so I had a long relationship with Christianity, and you know, I always felt different than other people. Even when I went to church, you know, I felt different. I didn't really, I'd be excited to go to church because I really wanted to connect with people. And I'd go and experience the worship and a good sermon that I enjoyed, and then afterwards you'd be like, I wanted more, and it didn't seem like anybody else really wanted more. Everyone was just like ready to go home. Home to what? What is everybody rushing off for? Why aren't people able to spend time and connect with each other? And some people I met were, so that was one of the positives about it for me, was that I did find some, at least somewhat like-minded people who are not interested in, you know, going out and getting fucked up and going out drinking and stuff like that. But most of what I saw was a lot of hypocrisy. It was a lot of bullshit. There was a lot of people putting on an act, and they were. But whether or not people, you know, they're putting on an act or they live a good life, whatever, that doesn't make something true or false. You know, you could be a fucking Mormon, Seventh-day Adventist, you know, or like many of these Satanist people who on the outside appear to have the perfect home, and a lot of it is just a facade. And I'm not saying everybody is a facade, but whether it is or it isn't, it doesn't prove something is true or not. And you know, at the end of the day, what I saw was that the Christians were just like the rest of the world. There was really no different, you know. It was really no different, you know, except thinking that they're not like the rest of the world, but they're doing the same thing. They're working the same jobs, you know. They have the same goals of just being successful and raising a family, and you know, maybe more wholesome goals. You know, maybe they're not promoting you to go to the bar, you know, and do cocaine, but you know, it's still part of the system. It's more a subtle part of the system, because this is really crushing your real dreams and your creativity and your hopes, because it's a subtle way to teach you to conform, and it's telling you this is the recipe for success in life. The recipe for success in life is that you be a good Christian, you go to church on Sundays, you obey your mother and father, you pay your tithes, and then, you know, you do whatever you do. You go to college, you get education, you have a family, you have children, and then you have children in order that you may add to the Christianity, add to the Christian world, you know, so that they may grow and bring them up, indoctrinate them, brainwash them to be Christian, and then they will brainwash the next generation. And that's more or less how this has been going on, even though now it's losing its grip, you know, because now with the internet, with, you know, all the knowledge that is out there, all the information, you know, that's out there, and the light that's coming through. People like me who are deep in Christianity broke through, and I was deep in it. I was deep, and I knew arguments, and I had apologetics, and I could defend it, and I could, you know, all of it. And I was like, fuck, but how can it not be true? But I had this experience, and my experience as a 16-year-old, I was using to supersede the logic and everything that I saw, everything that I knew was true. Everything. When I went to church and I said, man, these people, they're eating GMOs, you know, like the pastor's not telling you what's really going on in the Middle East, and he's not telling you about exposing the Rothschild or the Illuminati. You know, maybe there was a few out there that are, but then they always kind of connect it, and they always just, you know, same shit, and supporting Israel, and, you know, and like, how can you support Israel? How can you support the genocide of the fucking Palestinian people? You know, but the Israelis, Jewish people, or people, chosen people of God. And that's another bullshit too, because they're not even genetic Jews. These are Khazars. This is all a Zionist, Israel's a whole Zionist propaganda that they created, that they sponsored, that they got, you know, Ashkenazi, Khazar Jews to come to Israel starting in the late 1800s. And they promoted the wars, and they funded it, and they funded Hitler. And then the Balfour Declaration, 1917, all that so that they can create a state of Israel. And Christianity says nothing about any of this shit. And there's books out there, you know, the 13th Tribe and other books that I haven't read yet, but I've watched some videos that discuss it. And this shit is, the gig is up, man. It's all coming out of the woodwork. All the truth is coming out. You know, everything is coming out. I mean, you see the pedophilia, all that is being exposed now. You know, and Pizzagate and the Vatican, all of it. So I'm very blessed that, you know, even though I was deep in it, you know, I still retained some sense of my own thinking, where I always thought something just don't add up. And when I was going through my own awakening of somewhat, beginning of my awakening of my consciousness was when I was started watching videos about 9/11. You know, that it was an inside job, and I used to work in the World Trade Center for 2 years, up until August 4th of 2001, when I resigned to move to Florida with my family. And you know, I always knew that shit wasn't right. I always knew, like, that don't make sense. And I always kind of knew that, yeah, they wanted to start war, and they were wanted some excuse. And it wasn't till 2012 when I started watching these documentaries and then watching Alex Jones, and, you know, then I started learning about 9/11 and, you know, Obama and all the presidents, and, you know, Skull and Bones and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the DuPonts and the JP Morgans and all these elite families, and how they created the Federal Reserve Bank in Jekyll Island, and it's a private bank, and, you know, GMOs and Monsanto, and why they are genetically modifying the food system, and what's the end game in that. And I started learning about the history of war, and going deeper, and even into Christianity and where that came from, and how the story has been told before, and Horus, the Egyptian son of God, and, you know, and all the truth it's coming out. It's coming out. You know, and there's a lot of fake light out there, you know, through New Age. And, you know, I've watched some of these guys, you know, Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra and Oprah and whatever, and I just take whatever smidgets of knowledge that I get from them, you know, even if I don't believe in everything they say, and I just use it for me. And, you know, and all these things, these have been my teachers, you know, Moji and Osho, and, you know, the psychedelics, you know, without a doubt. And then the Christianity, you know, the Christianity, what I saw was not telling the truth, was not telling you what was going on in the world, what is going on. You know, the Christianity was actually part of it, is part of it, and promoting it. You know, I go to church and I would get high. I started getting high, and so once in a while going to church, and I just watch the show. And I see they lay out, they're so nice, they lay out the nice cookies and crackers and all the things, finger foods for you to eat. that are filled with crack shit, poison. And then everybody talks to each other and says hi and goes home. And then they have a prayer meeting to pray for so-and-so who has cancer now from eating all that crap shit that you were giving them, plus the shit that they eat and the pharmaceuticals. And then they don't want to smoke marijuana or take it in some other form, or cannabis oil. And they condemn that because that's, puts you in a altered state of consciousness. And they consider it like some type of satanic devil worshiper. Meanwhile, it can heal you from many diseases. So I started seeing like this, how can these people say they have the Holy Spirit, and what's so holy about them? They're just the same, if not worse, than everybody else. And even in more recent times, because this was 2012, 13, it was when I started awakening. In 2013, when I took the mushroom the second time. And I was watching an ex-black pastor called Ray Hagins while I was on the mushroom. And it's really weird, like he was talking about Christianity, and he was just telling them the stories of the Bible. How the serpent was talking to Eve and deceived Eve and animate the apple. And then Noah by himself and his family built this whole ark and got all the animals on. And for 40 days, and how did they eat? What did they piss and shit? And you start really thinking about stuff, and you're like, fuck, man, this is a fucking fantasy. It's a story. It's just a book. It's just a book. Even, the story of Lot, and Abraham, and Lot is in Sodom and Gomorrah with his family, and then God sends the two angels, the archangels, whatever, to warn Lot to flee Sodom because God's going to destroy it. And the mob of the whole town of fucking whatever these people, disgusting sexual beings were, wanted to rape the angels. And the great righteous Lot that God was saving says, no, you cannot take the angels. Instead, what I'm gonna offer you, my 2 virgin daughters. How's that? Righteous, right? So I started thinking about it, and then when I was on the mushroom in some moment, it just became clear that it's a lie. It's just a fantasy. It's just a story. And then I had to deal with the reality that I have been believing a lie for most of my life. And I was 35 at the time, I believe, and I'm 40 now. So yeah, for most of my life, I mean, I had times where I was not being a good Christian boy, and I definitely was out there being a big mess. And I'll talk about that too, because I've had, kind of a Siddhartha life. I'm sure many others have, and that's all part of it too. I've been holy, and I've been the sinner, and I've been the saint, and I've been the devil, and I've experienced all of it, and I know what I talk about. And I know, there'll be Christian people out there who'll tell me, oh, you weren't really a true Christian, you weren't really truly born again, and or I backslided, or a bunch of bullshit. And that's what they do too. They tell you like, oh, if you stopped believing, it would have been better than if you were never born, and and just all this guilt. This is not of God. God is love. God is love. God is love. There's no guilt. There's no hell. Hell is here. And there's a lot to us as humans, and now I'm finding out the truth, that we're multi-dimensional beings, and I'm finding out all these amazing things, and thank God for, the mushroom and ayahuasca and anything, the people out there that are speaking the truth. It's all being used. It's all being used to spread the gospel of love and light and the truth, and to expose and to bring down the dark systems of religion, of government, of military, all of it. So I hope that you stay blessed. I hope this video has inspired or at least entertained you, and hopefully we can continue growing and rise to the top. Peace.